To America, where time is ticking for that country to deal with its debt crisis, with the world's largest economy set to run out of cash, apparently, in a matter of days. This graph shows just how dire the situation is.
In just a few short days, the United States potentially is about to default on its debt. That's over $31.4 trillion of borrowed money we don't have. And as a cryptocurrency holder, this affects you.
As you can see, the national debt has grown significantly since the early 80s under both Republicans and Democrats. Number of factors have caused it to creep up over the years, but it's now reached a whopping $31.4 trillion. That's trillion with the T, US dollar. Joining me now, CNN's business correspondent Richard Quest. Questy, how serious is this?
Let me share with you this full clip, awesome perspective, but in 90 seconds or less. What is the debt ceiling, and specifically, what day does this expire? Created by Congress in 1917, the debt limit, or ceiling, sets the maximum amount of outstanding federal debt the U.S. government can incur. Back in January 2023, the total national debt, as well as the debt ceiling, both stood at $31.4 trillion, meaning we reached the limit months ago. And actually, the U.S. government has run a deficit averaging nearly $1 trillion every year since 2001, meaning it spends that much more money than it receives in taxes and other revenue. And why do we even have a debt ceiling? I mean, why doesn't the government just only spend what they have? It was President Woodrow Wilson that needed more money to spend on World War I, so lawmakers voted that debt ceiling in. And Congress at the time set a borrowing limit of $11.5 billion, and any increase after would require congressional approval. Now the debt ceiling is almost a joke at this point. It doesn't really mean anything because since World War II, the debt ceiling has been modified more than 100 times. So if you hold Bitcoin or crypto, how serious is this if we don't again raise that ceiling?
It is both extremely serious, bordering on catastrophic and devastating, and it is not serious at all, Koshi, because the debt ceiling is a totally man-made, fabricated, artificial ceiling. The law says you have an overdraft of $31.x trillion, and you can't borrow any more until you raise it. But all you've got to do is raise it, and that's it. And every so many years, we have this battle between the Republicans and the Democrats over raising the overdraft limit. Just imagine you with an overdraft. I know that's hard to believe, Koshi, I realise, but imagine you with an overdraft. And as you're getting closer and closer to hitting the overdraft, the wife says, or the bank manager says, would you like to pay it down? You say, no, thank you. Well, shall we raise the overdraft? And that's where we are at the moment.
But Richard, the numbers are extraordinary. 31 trillion.
No.
Hang on. To an Australian it is. To an Australian it is. They're doing $1 trillion budget deficit. We're doing a surplus. So are they ever going to pay it down? It's more than the value of their economy.
Right, more than debt to GDP, but we're not talking about the economy of a small country. You're talking about a $25 trillion economy to start with. Yes, debt to GDP is now almost at record highs, and that's as a result of the pandemic and as a result of spending that's had to take place on infrastructure since. But we'd all be in a much worse situation if the US had not spent that money. Now, what needs to happen is the short answer, because if they do default, Koshi, then you're looking at calamity, catastrophe, disaster,
around the world, is that?
Completely. Because everything is based on a single premise, that the US will pay its debts. And even if there was a technical default, say for an hour or two, or something didn't get paid, it's like virginity. Once it's gone, it's not coming back. And once the US virginity on debt default has gone, it's finished. And every bit of pricing in every single market would have to take effect because, Koshi, there's the simple question, if you've done it once, you could do it again.
I want to finish today's video by sharing with you the latest news actual audio from a Twitter space on where we stand today. But this CNN Australia news correspondent had it absolutely right. We're screwed if we don't raise the debt ceiling, and we're absolutely screwed eventually if we keep raising that debt ceiling. So how much time do we have to decide? Well, while Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said a default could happen as early as June 1st if Congress and the president don't act, today, the Bipartisan Policy Center has placed the most likely X date as sometime between June 2nd and June 13th. So with this potentially being just a few short days away, what does this mean to you if the United States defaults? Well, first, it's an immediate crisis if the US defaults. It's a crisis for Wall Street. It's a crisis for global markets, crypto markets, as they could drop or plunge. And this could also affect retirement savings, 401k plans, college savings, and anything tucked away and invested. So obviously, global markets could potentially crash. Also, certain federal programs will no longer be able to be paid for. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, veteran benefits, SNAP benefits, among others, could be among the first affected by the default. And if the timing benefits are correct, there's actually 3 big government spends that won't get funding. Number 1, $12 billion in military and civilian retirement benefits paid on June 1st. Number 2, $1 billion in tax refunds scheduled to go out June 7th, so you may not get your tax refund. And 3, $4 billion in federal salaries payable on June 9th. So tens of thousands of government employees, if not more, will be put out of work. The economy will surely be pushed into a bigger recession. Yet, on the other hand, if we raise the debt ceiling again, the other crisis involved here is longer term and slower moving. If the debt is allowed to grow at current rates, it will be unsustainable. For example, in just 30 years, just the interest on US debt would be so unsustainable that US taxpayers would be paying 50% of their taxes just for the interest on the debt. And this would also lead to dramatic cuts in spending along with the increase in taxes to make up the difference. And here's the dirty little secret that most financial experts won't share with you. I will. This is one of the big reasons Bitcoin was created in the first place.
Yeah, so now is an incredibly interesting time from a global macro perspective, and it also is you know, to borrow a phrase from the Old Testament, it appears that crypto has been created for such a time as this. So just to be clear, Bitcoin is a non-sovereign, hard cap supply, global, immutable, decentralized, digital store of value. And that's a lot of different adjectives, but all of them are very important. And what that leads us to is it is a hedge against monetary and fiscal irresponsibility from central banks and governments globally.
Now the latest update on a recent Mario Nafal Twitter Spaces. Breaking. Debt ceiling deal reached through handshake just in.
As of this morning, I have had conversations with 3 different people across both parties, one of whom is very close to the decision maker. And it seems like the debt ceiling deal is now imminent. A handshake deal essentially occurred last night and early this morning. Now they're working specifically on final language. But I can tell you sort of the basis of the deal. The one detail from the deal that seems to be very prominent is that, and again, please no one act on this, Jesus. I'm just like some random dude on Twitter, okay? All right. But one of the biggest parts of this that seems to be pretty well confirmed across both party lines is that there will be a 3% increase in defense spending. So a lot of people have been talking about how there might be defense cuts, but that was not on the chopping table. That's a really big one. That's a really big deal. And I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but the market actually has been reacting to that for a long time. And so, you know, and we saw that with companies like Boeing and Lockheed and others.
So take that for what you will. To me, I need a little more. So like always, click subscribe. We drop a daily video keeping you informed. See you tomorrow.